this House do now adjourn?
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Mary Glindon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would like to thank Mr Speaker for granting time for a debate on court delays and victims of sexual violence. I don't underestimate the challenges that the Minister faces. As I will hopefully draw attention to this evening, the task at hand is considerable, but overturning this situation is what's owed to survivors. This topic is emotive and cuts deep. Justice is a British value that so many in our country live their lives by, a strong sense of what is right and what is wrong. But justice is also a principle that we should all be able to fall back on when we fall victim to crime and seek redress. A timely and supported road to justice should be expected. It's a fundamental element of our social contract in Britain. The situation thousands of women and girls find themselves in today is far from this. The road to justice for so many victims of rape and serious sexual offences is long and falls desperately short of what is owed to them.
Will she give way?
I will give way.
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does she share my concerns that too many victims of domestic abuse are also facing years of court delays? This is an issue constituents have raised with me, and these delays have consequences. One told me that her life is on hold whilst her abuser is free to go on with his. She feels afraid to go out in her own hometown in case she's seen by him. Does she agree that it's essential that we not only address court delays, but we also implement fast-track processes for these cases to ensure that justice is served and served promptly?
My honourable friend could not have put it better, and that's the basis of this whole debate. Thank you. Looking at the quarterly statistics published last week, the number of sexual offence cases waiting to go to Crown Court stands at 11,574. This figure is up 44.5% on the number waiting at the same time in 2022. Just 2 weeks ago, the Director of Public Prosecution said that delays are as bad as, or probably worse than, he has ever known them to be. These are... I will give way.
I commend the Honourable Lady from Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend and for her concentration on this issue and bringing it forward for us all to support her tonight. Does the Honourable Lady not agree that whilst we can understand that every victim deserves their day in court, there should be some cases that give priority and deference to the stress and the anxiety of their case? Now, that sexual violence crimes must have this designation and ability for both the CPS and judges to streamline the proceedings. So what I think we're all looking for tonight is for the Minister to come back with a very, very positive answer on how we can hurry the system up. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention, because I think that we will hear something from the Minister. I think what the Government are intending to will hopefully get us somewhere down that road. These are women and girls that are sitting at the feet of trauma. Survivors face the enormous challenge of having to relive their experiences in court, and each day until then. The lengthy delays, which can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years, draw out this experience. Madam Deputy Speaker, I fear that more and more women and girls are losing faith in our criminal justice system, the one that is supposed to protect them. The Criminal Bar Association has said that the number of victims abandoning prosecutions has increased 41% in the first half of this year compared to the first 6 months of 2023. I will give you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Honourable Member agree that there can be unintended consequences of these delays, such as bail conditions changing? If the victim happened to move, then the bail condition to avoid the area may not work anymore, and then they have to go back to the police and back to court, and it can just become a maelstrom of just horrible, bringing it back all the time for them.
It causes unnecessary and really troublesome complexities for people in their lives when they've faced so much already. And I think that this is really, we can't emphasise this enough. In the final quarter of 2022, almost 70% of rape survivors withdrew from the justice system. The situation at present is nothing short of a crisis.
Will the honourable member be quick, please?
I will.
I thank the honourable member for bringing this debate here this evening. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's estimated that the number of rape victims that pull out of prosecutions before trial has more than doubled in 5 years, and one of the reasons given is a shortage of lawyers, both in terms of prosecution and defence lawyers, who are willing to take on rape and serious sexual assault cases, because they say that the cases are becoming increasingly complex and they are poorly paid in connection with other areas of the law. So does my friend think that it may be also a time for us to look at whether lawyers who do this kind of work should be properly paid to do this work?
Eventually, like Madam Deputy Speaker, I hope that the review that's going to take place will be looking at everything and cover every aspect, because I think the aim of the review is that it will be comprehensive and bring justice and fairness to everybody involved in the system. It's imperative that attention is drawn to the nature of postponements that are bearing down on the already fragile mental health of victims. I've heard heartbreaking accounts of court dates being moved on the morning of the scheduled trial. Imagine waiting in anticipation for that day of justice, exerting every ounce of mental strength for it to be snatched away on the day of the trial. Then I invite my colleagues and members to imagine this happening not once, but again and again and again. There's an important public safety element to all this as well, too often overlooked. Many perpetrators are not placed on remand. When there is a delay to a case being heard, there is someone who could be guilty walking the streets. But going back to fairness, there is a deep injustice to this. A victim's life is put on hold while they must look over their shoulder each and every day. But the perpetrator may be able to cling on to their freedom for years. I'm cognizant that there are a number of factors that have driven this enormous backlog: the pandemic, industrial action by criminal barristers, a lack of capacity in the legal profession, an increase in the number of complex cases entering the system. Many of these are quite well known, but it has also been brought to my attention that defence barristers may be able to generate a postponement by requesting a last-minute adjournment as a delay tactic. I'd be grateful if the Minister would commit to looking at this issue in more depth. There needs to be greater scrutiny of last-minute adjournments, which are having such devastating impacts on victims. In the summer, I wrote to the Justice Secretary on postponements and delays and was grateful for the response I received from the then Minister of State for Courts and Legal Services. I was assured that reducing waiting times for victims of serious sexual offences is a priority for our government. The Minister advised me that the Government was carefully considering the best way to fast-track rape cases and was working with the judiciary to understand how this may be achieved. I would be grateful if the House could receive an update on the Government's progress in delivering this manifesto commitment.
Would the lady agree with me that it's very important that we keep the blame for these backlogs exactly where they belong? So defence barristers are doubtless doing the best that they possibly can for their clients in some extremely difficult circumstances, and they are paid, as my honourable friend says, extremely poorly relative to other members of their profession. The most significant problems within the court systems have been caused by 14 years of chronic Tory underfunding, both within the court system itself, the CPS and the prison system, which means that far too few people are held on remand when they should be, that people are being bailed when they shouldn't be, that people are being then dealt with very swiftly to try and deal with custody time limits, that there are so many problems baked into this system as it stands, that victims are being wholeheartedly failed, and that we need to make sure that the system is being informed and invested in such a way that these problems don't continue to exacerbate, one of the most enormous ones being...
If the Honourable Lady wants to contribute to the debate, she always has the opportunity to ask the member in charge and the Minister, but interventions really must be shorter than that. Mary Glindon.
I think that our honourable friend is making a very good point, and the Labour government, and I'm sure we'll hear from the Minister, has a lot of plans to hopefully right all these wrongs. In recent days, we've heard the Minister for Courts and Legal Services signal toward once-in-a-generation type reforms, as well as the need to think boldly. I welcome her ambition. For women and girls who are waiting for their day of justice today, I'd be grateful if the Minister could set out what actions the Government are taking in the short term to medium term on this issue. As I bring my speech to an end, I want to give voice to a constituent who wrote to me with her experience. I want her to know that there are people listening. I want her to know that she has shown exceptional bravery by sharing her story, in the hope that others won't have to endure what she has. I want her to believe that the Government can put this right. With your permission, I will end with her words, if I can speed them, okay, Madam Deputy Speaker, which are deeply moving and a powerful expression of what she and others are going through. And I quote, in one word, dying. I feel like dying, to end the pain of living every day knowing that the trial could be postponed again, like it has so many times now. I'm living in limbo with the weight of the trial weighing on me every day. The intense anxiety in the run-up to the trial date is unbearable. I can't eat, sleep, or enjoy anything. There is absolutely nothing for me to look forward to. It's like trying to walk through the deepest, muddiest river and getting absolutely nowhere, just stuck in the same place. And that is what it is like every time the trial is postponed, and I must wait months for the next trial date, and the cycle starts again. It's killing me every single day.
Sir Alex Davies-Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend, for securing this very important debate this evening. We've heard some incredibly powerful and moving stories, and I know that everyone in this House, despite our political differences, are united in one purpose: that more must be done to bring victims the swift justice that they deserve, and more must be done to properly support them throughout the whole justice process. As we have heard, for too many victims in this country, justice delayed does mean justice denied. And as my honourable friend has stated, only last week the new statistics laid bare the scale of the backlog in our Crown Court, which is now at a record high. There were 73,000 cases awaiting trial or a sentencing hearing as of September this year. This number has doubled since 2019. Sexual offence cases, including rape, were taking on average 356 days from arrival at the Crown Court to completion, a significant increase on the average for sexual offences pre-COVID. As politicians, we often reel out statistics, but behind each one of those statistics are real people, real victims, including people who have endured rape and sexual abuse, who are not just waiting for months for trial, but years. For some, that seemingly endless wait is quite understandably too much to bear. Left without hope of the justice that they deserve and facing a long road to the closure that they need, many drop out of their case altogether. And when they do, their attackers get away without consequence, free to offend again. It is... I will happily give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and she's making a very important point about victim attrition. But one of the things that I'm very concerned about is that these court delays also mean that where the cases are heard, that the testimony of victims, including the victim survivor in these cases, is going to be of much poorer quality given the length of time passed, and you're going to see more cases where you end up with a not guilty verdict for people who should very much be behind bars. Is that something that the department is looking at, and are there statistics on that for what the backlog has meant for the conviction rate?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention. She's right. There are concerns, and I hear them, as does the department, in terms of how some of the special measures that have been implemented that are meant to empower survivors and victims in giving their testimony are potentially having a negative impact. I will come on to that in my speech as I go along, but it is something that I and the department are very alive to. And that is why it is my aim to get out there and to meet as many victims and survivors as possible, to hear directly about their experiences. And some of these experiences are unimaginably awful. One victim survivor of rape told me that her case took years to finally get to trial. And she said to me, similar to my honourable friend's constituent said to her, words that I will never forget, that the entire experience had made her want to die. No one should ever feel that way about our justice system. I am proud that this government was elected with a landmark mission to halve violence against women and girls within the decade, finally making these horrific crimes a political priority after years of neglect. It won't be easy, but I believe we're up to the challenge. But if we are to have any hope of doing so, then we must improve how the justice system responds to these crimes. And then that must include ensuring victims' cases are heard swiftly by the courts. Madam Deputy Speaker, as I have said, this government inherited a criminal court system stretched to breaking point. We have taken the crucial first steps to bear down on that caseload, including funding 106,500 sitting days at Crown Court this financial year. And we have extended Magistrates' Court sentencing powers to 12 months when dealing with offences that can be heard either in the Crown Court or the Magistrates' Court. And that will free up 2,000 days at the Crown Court, meaning more capacity to hear the most serious cases. But the number of cases that is entering the Crown Court shows no signs of letting up. So, if victims are going to see justice more swiftly in this country, then we can't simply do more of the same. We have to go further. And to deliver the government's bold plan for change and make our streets safer, it will take a once-in-a-generation reform of our court system. And that is why the Lord Chancellor announced just last week that she has commissioned Sir Brian Leveson to carry out an independent review of the criminal court. Looking specifically at how we might speed up the hearing of cases, Sir Brian's review will examine how our courts can operate more efficiently, but it will also look at much more fundamental reform, including considering the introduction of an intermediate court, where cases that are too serious to be heard by a magistrate alone could be heard by a judge alongside magistrates. We expect Sir Brian to report on his initial findings in spring next year. This marks a crucial step towards our ambition to bear down on the overall caseload and bring waiting times for all victims, witnesses and defendants down. But as I have said, we know that victims of sexual violence endure particularly long waits for justice. That is why, as the House will be aware, we have made the commitment to fast-track rape cases through the system. We are considering the best way to do so, and we are keen to build on the work of the senior judiciary already in this space. I saw one of their initiatives firsthand during my visit to Bristol Crown Court over the summer, and I was struck by how tirelessly those judges and court staff are working to keep these cases moving. It was honestly inspiring to see. But this is a tough challenge, and whatever we do, waiting times will not come down overnight. But if we are to keep victims engaged while they continue to face lengthy waits, partners across the criminal justice system and victim support services must and are pulling together. The Ministry of Justice provides ring-fenced funding for independent sexual violence advisors and independent domestic violence advisors, as well as for community-based domestic abuse and sexual violence services. This is on top of the core funding that we provide to police and crime commissioners to allocate at their discretion. I'm pleased to say that we are maintaining the 24-25 funding levels for sexual violence and domestic abuse support next year. The CPS also recently announced its Victims Transformation Programme, which has a focus on improving the justice process for victims of rape and serious sexual offences. Pre-trial meetings with prosecutors are now being offered to all adult rape and serious sexual offences victims, and there will be greater access to independent sexual violence advisors, as well as dedicated victim liaison officers. But, as my honourable friend has mentioned, victims' experience at court is of course affected by the interactions that they have there and with the staff. I will happily give way.
First of all, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I very much welcome what the Minister is saying tonight. It's really positive stuff. So the Right Honourable Member will know policing and justice is a devolved matter in Northern Ireland, but I know that the Honourable Lady takes a big interest in Northern Ireland. Could I ask her to share what the Honourable Lady has put forward tonight with the relevant authorities at the Northern Ireland Assembly? Thank you so much.
I welcome that intervention. Being an MP for a devolved nation, I'm acutely aware of the need to ensure that we have a joined-up approach here. Although justice and policing is devolved to Northern Ireland, I will happily discuss this with colleagues to see how we can best approach this, because a rape victim or a sexual violence victim survivor anywhere in our United Kingdom is currently suffering an insufferable weight, and we need to do more to protect all victims across the United Kingdom. As I've said, the victim experience of court is something we need to look at, and as part of that same programme, over 500 CPS staff who will be meeting with victims have also received trauma-informed training. We will also continue to deliver trauma-informed training at Snaresbrook, Leeds and Newcastle Crown Courts, with over 400 professionals trained so far, including court staff and the police. Witness waiting rooms and in-court technology have been upgraded in those courts so that victims can give their best evidence, watch proceedings away from the courtroom, or simply wait in a comfortable and private space. Attending court can be terrifying, and I know many victims quite understandably fear bumping into their perpetrator when they do. The use of...
I thank the Minister for giving way, and the point you just made there about victims being able to watch from another room. That's something that often isn't the case in rape trials, where the victim is considered a witness rather than a participant in the case. I know that the department are looking at things like transcripts. Would this be something that would become more readily available, so victims who don't feel like they can participate in it for whatever reason while the trial is taking place can read what happened after the trial as part of that process of closure?
I thank my honourable friend again for that intervention. Another important point, we are currently offering that pilot for the transcripts. I will mention that again in my speech as I come to it. But it's part of how much more comfortable can we make this whole terrifying process for victims and survivors when they're in our court system. What more can we do to make this experience as comfortable, if that is the appropriate word, as it can be, because we know, as I've said, it can be utterly terrifying. And there are also these concerns around the way that victims' evidence is currently given and presented to the jury. I hear those concerns loud and clear, particularly where it can potentially reduce that chance of securing a conviction. And this is something that the Department are conducting a thorough impact evaluation on, to look at whether Section 28, for example, which is that mechanism by which victims can give their testimony in advance of trial, and we are looking at that to see whether or not it does actually affect the case outcome, court effectiveness and the timeliness of that cross-examination, and we will be publishing our findings to this review in the new year. Victims of rape and sexual offences can also request their transcripts of Crown Court sentencing remarks for free through our one-year pilot, which is running until May next year, and I would encourage all victims and survivors eligible to find out if this could be helpful and to please take up this offer.
On that point, just for clarification, would this only be available for victim survivors where they have secured a successful conviction? Because given what we're talking about here, I think it's important that people who weren't able to secure a conviction can still access those transcripts as part of that important process of closure.
I thank my honourable friend. My understanding is no, any victim who is eligible is able to apply for that, whether a conviction has been sought or not, but I will seek clarification for her on that matter. This is a landmark mission. And we have further to go to support victims of rape and sexual offences, both at court and across the whole of their journey through the system. So as well as fast-tracking rape cases through the courts, I'm proud that from next year we plan to begin rolling out our free, independent legal advisors for victims of adult rape. These advisors will be a real step forward for victims, offering legal advice at any point between report and trial. So victims are fully aware of their rights, for example, in relation to the use of their personal records during an investigation, and they can challenge decisions about their case if they disagree with them. We will also introduce specialist rape and sexual offence teams in every police force. We will make sure that police officers receive stronger training on violence against women and girls and ban anyone with a history of violence against women and girls from joining the police force. Wherever they are in their journey through the system, I want to make sure that every victim knows their rights, and that agencies are held accountable for delivering those rights. The Victims and Prisoners Act 2024 lays the foundation for ensuring that victims know their rights they should receive under the Victims Code, and agencies are held accountable for delivering them. The Act also places a duty on local commissioners in England to collaborate in the commissioning of support services for victims of domestic abuse, sexual abuse and serious violence. We'll consult on a revised Victims Code and the duty to collaborate guidance early next year. I'm working with my officials to make sure that we have the right data and systems to monitor compliance with the new code. And we've pledged to increase the Victims Commissioner's powers so that there is more accountability when victims' needs are not being met. My honourable friend asked me about the impact of adjournments and what they are having on victim survivors. I'd like to reassure her, to let her know that I am looking at every single possible solution and pulling every lever at my disposal across the criminal justice system to make sure that we leave no stone unturned in ensuring that victims of these abhorrent crimes receive the swift justice they deserve.
On that point, will the lady give way?
I will happily give way.
I understand that there's a very specific problem with the criminal injuries compensation scheme as it stands, whereby a claim has to be brought within 2 years of the original allegation, which in many cases there hasn't even been the prosecution occurred at that point. Is that something that the department is looking at? Thank you.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention. She will be aware of the previous consultations run by the previous government on the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. I have been reviewing those reviews. I'm looking to publish the government response in the new year, but we are aware of the concerns from the sector and from victim survivors about the scheme, and we are looking to see how much more we can do to support victims and survivors in the whole on these issues. But let me come to a close by again thanking my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle upon Tyne East and Wallsend, for securing this debate, and all honourable and right honourable members who have contributed to such a thoughtful discussion. Sexual offences leave devastation in their wake. Victims are often left traumatised, and at the very least, they deserve swift justice. But too often, that justice process only serves to traumatise them further, whether it is not getting the right support or facing an agonising wait for their case to come to court, as we have heard so powerfully this evening. We have inherited a criminal justice system, and a criminal court system in particular, in crisis. But the rebuilding effort is underway. We have an ambitious package for reform. We are thinking boldly. And while I'm realist enough to know that change will not happen overnight, I can assure you all that this government is up to the challenge.
Yeah. The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Order, order.